Herzlich willkommen bei Digitale Optimisten. Ich bin Alex und ich bin mit diesem Podcast auf der Suche nach den Nachfolgern von Elon Musk und Steve Jobs. Also den Gründern, die mit ihren Startups und Ideen die Welt von morgen verändern werden. Ich melde mich wie immer direkt aus dem Herzen der Digitalisierung, dem Silicon Valley. Heute in Folge 7 spreche ich über ein Thema, das wohl wie kein anderes auch im Ausland mit Deutschland verbunden wird: Autos und Mobilität. 1885 hat Karl Benz es in Deutschland erfunden und viele mutige Unternehmer haben die Automobilindustrie zum Powerhouse der deutschen Wirtschaft gemacht. Mittlerweile sind fast 1 Million Menschen in der deutschen Automobilindustrie beschäftigt und fast 8% der gesamten deutschen Wirtschaftsleistung geht auf die Automobilindustrie zurück. Aber jetzt droht ein neuer Sheriff in die Stadt einzureiten, die VW, Daimler und BMW so lange beherrscht haben. Dieser Sheriff heißt Elektromobilität und wird vor allem aus dem Silicon Valley nach vorne getrieben. Elektrische Fahrzeuge oder EVs im Englischen versprechen sauberer, leiser und vor allem sexier zu sein. Aber ein großes Problem hält viele Käufer davon ab, elektrisch zu werden: Range Anxiety. Das ist die Nervosität, die viele Fahrer von EVs verspüren, wenn sie an die Lademöglichkeiten und Reichweite ihrer Autos denken. Mein heutiger Gast Thomas Sun hat eine geniale Lösung für dieses Problem. Er ist der Gründer und CEO von AmpUp, das Airbnb für das Laden von Elektroautos. Während manche gerne große Konglomerate bilden wollen, die dann aus einer Hand flächendeckend das Land mit Ladesäulen belegen sollen, macht AmpUp das Ganze bottom-up und lässt einfach jeden, der eine Ladesäule bei sich am Haus hat, diese stundenweise vermieten und damit direkt noch ein bisschen Geld verdienen. Tom Startup ist Absolvent des Y Combinators im Silicon Valley und mittlerweile der größte und am schnellsten wachsende Peer-to-Peer-Anbieter von Ladeinfrastruktur in den USA. Mehr Infos findest du wie immer auf digitaleoptimisten.de/podcast/Tom. Wenn dir der Podcast gefällt, dann gib mir 5 Sterne auf Apple Podcasts. An das Ende dieser Folge packe ich wie gewohnt die 3 Sachen, die ich persönlich aus diesem Gespräch gelernt habe. Und jetzt viel Spaß mit Tom Sun von AmpUp. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Alex. Honored to be here.
I have to tell you, I was thrilled to interview you. And let me ask you the first question. How did you come here today?
Well, I drove my Nissan Leaf, which is a smaller battery electric car, and I zipped around the highway, and it was really fun coming here.
Got it. So Nissan Leaf, electric vehicle. We'll get to your company in a minute, and we have a lot to talk about when it comes to electromobility. I do want to start talking about you. You have one impressive CV. You were an analyst at Goldman Sachs. You were a software engineer at Yahoo, software engineer at Twitter. Now you're a founder of a Y Combinator startup. My first question is, which of these positions taught you the most about what you want to do with your life?
I would say definitely the most recent one, which is the YC founder. I think being a founder teaches me so much because there are so little guidelines when you're a founder. There's very little restrictions, not unlike in big corporates where you have a manual documentation on how to do almost everything. In a startup world, and also because you are a founder, you are willing to try anything and everything to make the company survive. So there are very little restriction on what you can do. So just by trying anything that comes to my mind taught me a lot about life interaction with people and communication. I've learned communication is a very, very important thing. And also working at a startup that are so fragile at the early stage taught me, made me feel like I'm in a survival mode, which sort of brought me to this sensation of being a living animal on the planet where your existence is threatened and you're trying to find ways to survive. And I felt that's one of the most liberating experience and feeling ever.
Wow, so the scarcity of resources makes you look for new ways to solve problems.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that motivates you most.
Yeah.
So let's kind of go through your CV just a little bit, right? Maybe you can walk us through it. What's your background? Why did you decide to join Goldman Sachs? Because I do think you have a bit of a different background. And then why, especially I'm interested in what made you switch from one company to another?
Yeah. So I'll start maybe with why I joined Goldman right out of college. So I was an electrical engineering major in college. People find it surprising that I joined a financial industry, joining the financial industry right out of college. But the thing is, at that time, a lot of finance were getting more engineering than business, especially around trading, which had become more automated, algorithmic, and high speed. So even though my training was in undergrad was electrical engineering, I had some knowledge in both math and computer programming. So that made me sort of the perfect candidate for a lot of these trading-related jobs on Wall Street. Back in college, there was a Morgan Stanley held trading competition. And I assembled a team at U of I that actually beat 16 other teams to go to the final round of the trading competition. We actually beat a few teams of PhDs.
That must be satisfying, huh?
Yeah, it's very satisfying. But we weren't the winner ultimately. But that sort of gave me a taste of super fast feedbacks in terms of what you do and what the results are. And it's very straightforward. It's in terms of P&L, the money you make or the loss that you suffer. Mm-hmm. So that's what sort of intrigued me to switch from maybe a more engineering background to finance. And then the reason I jumped around a little bit was because one, I was sort of spoiled because coming with a strong engineering degree from one of the actually very good school. A lot of people don't know about U of I, but for people who are in engineering actually know about University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. A lot of different places actually want me to join them. So I had a lot of options, and I was also very young, a little bit immature. So with any sort of imperfections, things that I didn't like, was a big enough reason for me to look around. Mm. And I did that. But throughout the years of experience, I know that nothing's perfect out there. And when I look back, I feel sometimes I should have been more patient, and I should have maybe approached the problem head on, maybe look at the problem from a different perspective. Maybe it's actually my fault instead of my environment's fault.
So you leave, I think Twitter was the last job that you had in a company, in an established company, I guess. So then at some point you said, you know what, this corporate world might not be the best fit. I'm going to do my own thing. Can you walk us through or take me back to the time where you made that big decision?
Yeah, actually that decision was made over a long period of time. I've always been a creative person. I wouldn't say I'm an entrepreneur yet, because I feel to be an entrepreneur, you actually have to be, successful at one of your projects, which hasn't happened to me yet. But I've always been very creative. So even in college, my final senior design project was actually a version of Square, before Square actually came out. And
so Square, you mean the payment solution? Yes. By Jack Dorsey, where you can pay everywhere. You get this little dongle on your iPhone and you can pay.
Yeah.
With a credit card.
Exactly, with a credit card. And the special feature we had with the credit card was because we were trying to, it was actually also another personal issue. As a millennial, we hate carrying around cash. And many of the small restaurants on campus accept only cash. From talking to the business owners, we found out that they can accept credit card, but there's always this minimum credit card fee that restricts them from selling something that's only around $4. What we thought is that maybe we can sort of accumulate small transactions into a bigger one so that they can benefit. So what we did was not only we did something where credit cards can be swiped anywhere, but also it has a gift card feature where it swipes $200 at once, and then that $200 sort of becomes a gift card at that particular business. So in the future, you just keep swiping from the $200 instead of swiping per transaction through your credit card. So we are able to read the credit card number and create a gift card account within the system. So we thought that was a brilliant idea.
So basically like doing a prepaid gift card for every transaction and charging that virtual gift card to minimize cost to merchants and allowing people to pay with credit cards.
That's right. Yeah. But the thing failed because I really lacked sales skills. Out of the, I think, 70 some restaurants in town and on campus, we were only able to convince one restaurant to try out our product. And after a few bucks, the owner decided to pull the plugs on it.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was your first endeavor, your first startup that you did while you were at university. I got that right. But were there any other building blocks on your way to founding AmpUp?
Yes. So as software engineers and people who work for tech companies, we all have some sort of a side hustle or side projects. And through those things, I learned that to be able to build something big and successful, you need a strong team. So basically, that was another reason why I jumped around big companies, was to actually meet really, really smart, strong, motivated people. So I expand my network, and everyone I meet, I will try to evaluate them to see if they are a potential co-founder for myself. So basically, around the end of Twitter was when I feel like I have a pretty strong team for what I wanted to do. And then it was sort of along with the hype of the blockchain and cryptocurrency, which I got interested in years ago before I quit Twitter, around 2013.
Did you buy some Bitcoin at the time?
I did, but very little.
Oh, you did? So you're a rich man now.
Not really. I bought it more for the reason of a tech nerd rather than investment. So bought only a single Bitcoin just to see how things worked, and also tried to mine some Bitcoins, but weren't very successful with that either. Yeah, I did have a friend that tried to get me into Bitcoin mining in college. It was all the way back in 2009, and he actually used our school's computer lab to mine Bitcoins, and then he had nearly 1,000 coins, and then he swapped 1,000 Bitcoins for a MacBook Pro at the time.
Oh, 1,000 Bitcoins.
1,000.
Wait, the
10 million.
That was 10 million at one point.
Yeah, 10 million US dollars when Bitcoin was worth like 10,000.
And he swapped it for a MacBook.
Yes.
It's years. Well, you never know, huh?
Right.
You never know. Yeah. Okay, but that got you into. So you got into the blockchain hype before it became this huge thing that was on the cover of tabloids all over the world. And so what did you try to do in that space?
That was actually a project I did before AmpUp that I pivoted from. So I've always been interested in this blockchain distributed systems and distributed ledger concept. And when I first moved to the Bay Area, California, with my wife, we bought a small house in Sunnyvale. And immediately we wanted to get solar panels. But because we have a huge tree in our yard that covers about 87% of our rooftop, all of the solar companies rejected our request to install solar panels because it's not worth it. We know that our neighbors are using solar panels, and we say there must be a way for us to still use solar energy to promote the sustainability factor. That's when it struck me to build a distributed electricity exchange system. So that was my first project. So when I actually finally decided to quit Twitter and come out to do this blockchain-based distributed electricity project, cryptocurrency was already at the height of the hype. At that point, there was this concept called initial coin offering that everyone were doing. So you can raise a ton of money with very silly ideas. Maybe starting a campfire can raise $1 million. So I thought the peer-to-peer electricity project was a very ambitious idea, actually. I realized that as a founder. But I thought, I'm in luck with this sort of published hype around cryptocurrency and ICO. I thought I could play by luck, raise a large amount of money, and then then solve all of the challenges associated with this ambitious project with the amount of money I can raise.
Was it successful? Did you raise money?
We did raise money, but not enough to actually sustain us.
How much did you need and how much did you get?
So I will throw out a number that I thought we needed. We thought we could bring that project to somewhere solid with $15 million.
$15 million.
Yes. That was actually not the most ambitious. It was not even the average ambitious ICO fundraising target. So on average at that time, people were raising 20, 30, 40, even $50 million with ICO. But in reality, we were sort of at the very end of that hype. And also to actually raise successfully through ICO, there are a lot of hidden rules and games that you have to play to be successful with that. And it turned out I learned a lot of sort of the darker secrets of raising money through ICO, the heaviness of how much you have to do marketing, how much you have to blow up the story disproportionately, that it no longer resemble your initial vision. So I sort of refused to do what investors wanted me to do, which is to just sell the story as big as possible. So we were only able to raise a little bit over $1 million.
Still a lot of money, though. I mean, the ICO time. I mean, it's like a couple of years back, but that reminded me a bit of the .com bubble at the time.
Yeah.
Everything was shifting towards blockchain. Every VC, every venture capital company was looking for blockchain. That was the hot topic. But still, raising $1 million is still quite an achievement, right? Even though you fell short of the goal. But so you had $1 million, you raised it. Yeah. What did you do with it?
So actually, there are two phases of fundraising with cryptocurrency projects. The first fundraising is to fundraise for the second fundraising. Sort of, to run a successful ICO, you need to spend about $1 million on legal and on accounting and on marketing. Majority of that will be on marketing. So hiring people to run like a Twitter account and then have fake accounts follow your account to make sure that you have so many number of followers. Sort of starting events where people can join and come and hear about your ideas. You might need to give away a lot of free things just to sort of artificially build up the market and the hype around your particular cryptocurrency. So in total, you need around $1 million because the lawyers and the accountants also caught on to this hype. And normally for the services that they would charge for maybe $20,000, they are starting to charge for $200,000, $300,000.
They smell money.
Yes. And then one of the most lucrative thing, it turned out, in cryptocurrency was hosting events. These international conferences where so many people come. The tickets to those conferences are normally about $1,000, $2,000 per person. So just like the mining business, the people who really made long-term profit were the people that made the machines rather than people who actually had access to the mine.
It's interesting. I think there's a saying that goes, when there's a gold rush, sell shovels.
Yes.
Right? And help. Right. So basically that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And at some point, you were doing blockchain, and now, well, we're going to talk about AmpUp now. You're now invested in electromobility. So was there a certain moment where you thought, wow, electromobility, that's the way to go. That's where I want to spend my time and energy?
Yeah, for sure. So it was two separate routes that merged that got me to pivot from the previous project to AmpUp. So one was my personal issues with charging. So when I was working on the previous project, which was peer-to-peer electricity, I wasn't paying myself any salary because I fully believed in that mission, and I wanted to invest every single dollar into the ICO. So that's what I did, and I tried every way possible to save money. And cutting gas was one of the things I thought about doing. So I leased through a lot of rebates and government programs very cheaply a Nissan Leaf. So I was actually able to cut away all of my gas expenses, but charging actually became a huge pain for me that I had to put in mental arithmetic to plan out my week just so I don't get stranded on the road. So solving my own personal charging issue was one thing that led me to AmpUp that I can go into deeper a little bit later. But another thing was this peer-to-peer electricity project. The reason it also died was because it had a dependency on the local utilities, because we're essentially still using their poles and wires to do the actual transfer of energy. And we had to integrate our billing system with their billing systems that involves the electric meter to make sure that people don't get double charged. So, and working with these large incumbents in the utility and energy space was very draining. So enterprise sales was slow, and working with utilities were even slower. So we were sort of dragged to death by that. And that was because we had a heavy dependency on the infrastructure. But if you think about AmpUp, the peer-to-peer EV charging is actually very similar to the peer-to-peer electricity, except now we replace the dependency on the infrastructure with a battery on wheels. So we are no longer dependent on the utility infrastructure. So we're still sort of working on this peer-to-peer electricity idea, except with a solution that actually solves my personal issues.
Got it. So you found a new use case for the basic idea that you had. So I went, obviously, of course, I read your website, and what I read there is, what is AmpUp, right? It's the largest reservable electric vehicle charger network born out of a sharing community of private hosts, complemented by the most aggregated networks of public chargers. I'm pretty sure you didn't put that in your pitch deck, right? But what is the one sentence pitch to explain what AmpUp does?
So we were known as the AirBnB of electric vehicle charging within YC, and that's what I typically tell other people when I first meet them. So we're the Airbnb for electric vehicle charging.
The Airbnb of electric vehicle charging. That is something that I can that I can understand. The first thing that I thought about when I kind of did a bit of research on AmpUp is, could you also describe it as, if the gas station is the solution for the 20th century, then AmpUp is the solution for the 21st century mobility. Would you subscribe to that idea?
Yes, I love the way you phrased it. Yeah.
So I let's say I buy a Nissan Leaf or a Tesla or some electric cars. They're coming up, especially here in the Bay Area. I've never seen so many Teslas as here. So you already talked about the problem, right? And the problem is I have to charge my electric vehicle somewhere, but I might not have the ideal spot anywhere. Let me understand, how big is the problem at this point?
The problem is, the ultimate problem that EVs are trying to solve is for a more sustainable energy future. And the problem that we're helping with electric vehicles is adoption. So range anxiety is still the number one issue, both faced by existing EV drivers and people who are thinking about adopting EVs.
So range anxiety, meaning I'm not sure if I can make the trip to wherever because I don't know if
Exactly.
the charge lasts.
That's right. And with deeper research, range anxiety mainly results from two things. So one, a lack of infrastructure. So there are not enough chargers. And then two, the unpredictability around charging, because if you know people who are driving EVs, they will tell you that all of the public charging options are first come, first serve. So there's no reservation, and people are sort of stuck with hunting for a open charger when they need to charge away from home.
So you're basically saying, well, the market, or the go-to market to the people that have these connectors, these electric connectors, is, you know what? Just rent it out. Just don't rent out your apartment that you would do on Airbnb. Rent out your connector for a designated time slot and make some bucks on the side.
That's right. So we're trying to solve sort of the lower hanging fruits. So there's been numerous studies saying that there's an existing gap that will actually grow larger between the number of EVs on the road and the charging infrastructure available to public use.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think I understand what you're doing. I find it really interesting, especially because there are a couple of central ways of trying to increase the grid or the number of connectors, but you're kind of doing it in almost in a crowdsourced way, to allowing everyone to give owners of electric vehicles a chance to charge and earn some bucks. Where is your company at the moment?
We are currently have successfully raised a seed round funding, and we have a team size of 15 employed plus full-time contractors. We have a core team of 6 people that are employed by AmpUp, and we have an extended team in 9 people full-time contracted to us. So we're executing our solid plan for growth at this point. I have recruited some of the best people I can see to work on this particular challenge. People who have actually energy utility background, who actually dedicated most of their careers in EV to help grow this market, to help us establish partnerships with other people who are providing charging options to the EV drivers. So together we're providing a better solution for everyone. But 5 months ago, we were sort of it was actually just me by myself and the idea of AmpUp and some preliminary market research.
That was 5 months ago. You had a pitch deck, and now you stand at 15 employees. That is impressive. And if I understand correctly, growth is obviously the number one goal or KPI that you're tracking. And how do you in particular measure growth for your company?
The business that AmpUp is building is sort of like a marketplace. So we have reservable chargers that are shared private chargers. We're actually also trying to add not just individual private chargers, but also private enterprise chargers along with some of our public partners. So the number of reservable chargers is one metric that we have. And then on the other side are number of drivers or actual users that are creating the reservations. So our ultimate goal is to actually get to 1,000 reservations a day. That's the metric that we're getting to.
1,000 reservations a day. And you're getting to a point that I find especially interesting, because if I understand correctly, you're working on a two-sided market.
Yeah.
Because people that drive the EVs or electric vehicles might not be the same people as that provide these charging stations. And based on my experience, I am fascinated by the go-to-market approach in two-sided markets.
Yeah.
It can be challenging, but how? And obviously, one of the biggest challenges is, so if you get a bunch of people that can use it, do they actually see, do they have charging capabilities? On the other hand, if you have charging capabilities, does anyone actually use it? So you're always trying to balance the scale upwards. And as you say that your main goal is growth, how do you do this balancing?
Great question. So it's the classic chicken and egg problem that's also faced, by the way, by the EV industry in general. The public charging infrastructure players are not willing to install more chargers until they see more adoptions of EV, and people will not adopt more EV until they see more infrastructure for charging. So one thing that we're lucky in is that we're strategically located at a very good location. So the Bay Area is probably the highest EV adoption zone in the world. On the two sides of the market, we can, for a while, we can sort of not worry about the demand side because there are enough people driving EVs in the Bay Area. What we are 100% focused on doing is growing our reservable charger network, either through private networks or private enterprise networks, or actually working with some of the public chargers to enable reservations on them.
Okay, so let's focus on that side of the market first. So trying to get people to sign up and say, I'll let people, let's say, in the time window of 2 to 6 p.m. to do reservations in a 2-hour slot. And you said you have some corporations there going, right? So what is are you trying to get those big corporations that build these grids onto your platform? Or is it more of a crowdsourced way of trying to get those people? How do you identify those people that have a charger, that have a...
Yeah.
Because maybe I have to clarify this question a bit, because I think about it in two ways. Maybe there's these corporations, and in my head there's always this, person who has a garage that does not use it, and try to convince him or her to rent it out, right?
So we have two main growth strategies. One is to actually leverage our own user base. So right now we have organically grown to almost 4,000 users. Just based on general industry statistics, 80% of the people today who are driving EVs have access to home charging. So that means 80% of the 4,000 people actually have a home charger, or actually at least have a plug at home. It might just be a wall plug or the NEMA plug for the washer or dryer. Basically, 80% of 4,000 is like more than 3,000 people that can potentially be host on our platform. But so far, we only have not even 100 hosts on our platform yet. So we basically have this treasure trove of people who can actually be hosting their chargers that we're not tapping into. So we have already hired a few salespeople that are going to actually try to approach our current users to have them not only be users of the platform but be hosts of the platform. That's one. And then the second one is more on the branding and the marketing side. So working with industry leaders and also social media influencers that are focused on the topic of electromobility and EVs, and have them help us reach their audience, which are most likely other EV drivers.
Understood. But when you say that 80% of drivers have a home charging device, does that mean that your market is the 20% plus people who are traveling from A to B?
Yes, for now, our targeted user side is the 20%. But as mentioned earlier, we are a two-sided market. Right now, we do, so even the 80% can also be our users by being hosts. And we want to make charging so easy that even if you have a home charger, there are still times where you need to charge outside of home, away from home. We want to provide that convenience to people. So all of the 80% that have access to home charging, they still charge about 15% away from home. And we want to take that 15% through AmpUp's offering of reserve charging. And we've talked to many people that they definitely prefer a reserved spot over hunting for a charger when they have a car full of kids and their wife. Some I've heard users of our platform say they were once stuck looking for a charger for 30 minutes with kids screaming in the back seats.
Oh God!
Yeah,
that doesn't sound fun at all. So you talked a bit about the host side of the market, and for the user side of the market, as I might call it, you're working with social media influencers.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Basically, people are actually very willing to help, especially in the space of EV, if you just ask them to help you. Because I started being an EV driver myself, I started following a lot of social media accounts, YouTubers that talk about issues around EVs. And some of them are famous reviewers of different EVs and different charging solutions and different amazing companies in sustainability. So we basically simply just reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we're working on. We're the AirBnB for electric vehicle charging. Are you interested in giving us either an objective review on your channel, or are you open to some sort of a paid advertisements? And all of them are actually very willing to do that. In fact, I was actually also invited to be on some of their podcasts to talk about AmpUp as well.
Interesting. So is that the main vein where you get customers, or are you also trying other things? Like, let's say it's almost classical AdWords or Facebook advertising, or are you focused on the social media angle?
We're for now only focused on the social media, the social influencer, because we know their audience are going to be most likely our target audience. And we, since we're still a small company, we want to make sure that every dollar we put into marketing comes with the biggest effect.
The ROI. So I find it interesting because when we started talking, you said your first startup, when you were back in university trying to sell, the gift card payment solution, you said from 70 restaurants that you approached, only one said because you were lacking sales skills.
Right.
So now you're hiring people to do the job. And have you gotten better at that skill?
Yeah, what I come to realize, good sales skill is actually not convincing people to do something that they didn't think about doing. Really good sales skills is actually qualifying who you should actually sell to. So over time, I've gotten better at identifying who I should talk to and who actually have a need for the solution I'm providing, and basically very efficiently either end the conversation or close the deal. That's what I've learned, and then with AmpUp, I still heavily participate in partnership meetings, but I've come with my own sort of script for educating our users and selling to people who are deciding whether to use our app versus other apps, and have given them to the salespeople we've hired.
Mm-hmm. So we talked a bit about the sales side. I also want to talk a bit about the product side, because I can imagine you are still not, you don't have a couple of years of product that you've built. You're still fairly early. You raised a successful seed round. I'm really interested in the journey that the product took from initial idea. Maybe you can share a bit about how you got into Y Combinator. You developed the product, and now it stands somewhere. Maybe you can walk us through that journey of actually building AmpUp.
Yeah, for sure. So the very first MVP was actually not even mobile. It was a very simple web page where you sort of attach a Google Calendar to any charter, where it helps you to do the scheduling or the reservation making. And then I also integrated Stripe to that web UI so that people can pay each other through credit card. That was it. And then it was only used by myself and 12 other people.
So just to understand, so you just hooked up a charging station to a Google Calendar, integrated a payment function, and people could reserve via the calendar and pay also via Google Calendar or via Stripe, I guess, in that case.
Yes, it was actually not exactly Google Calendar. It was like Google Calendar was an analogy.
Okay.
And the calendar wasn't actually integrated with the actual charter, so there's no access control over there. Actually, that's something we're developing right now, but back then it was basically just a calendar created for the charter host, so they can easily tell who's coming to charge at my place. And they can control that calendar by saying, my charter is only open on weekdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Don't come and bother me on other times. And then here's my rate per hour for charging. So that was really it. And it was used by a very small number of people, about 12 plus me, 13.
I mean, it was an MVP, so it was designed just to test basically the market, if the product works. What were the criteria that you said this could work or this could not work?
Basically, the criteria was, I was a power user of that feature for sure, and the initial product I used was PlugShare. PlugShare is still a very popular app, and they do have this peer-to-peer charging feature in that app, but they lack scheduling and they lack peer-to-peer payment. That was actually the main reason why I built a tool to automate my own reservation-based charging, was because on PlugShare, the way you make an arrangement to charge at somebody else's place is you either text or call them, which is very manual, very painful, very annoying. From the driver side, it's still very unpredictable. And then on the host side, you get bothered by text message and phone calls all the time. And then they lack a way for people to pay, because people in this community, they're very willing to help promote the EV adoption, and the actual transaction amount, the major cost to these people who are sharing their charger are really the electricity cost, which is not cheap, but it's not super expensive either. So the price is right in the range where it's very inconvenient for them to verbally ask somebody else to pay for it. But with a more automated tool, it takes away a lot of friction. So That's where actually the initial two features came from. It was talking to the PlugShare users who are like me, are using the peer-to-peer charging features.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So that was the calendar and the payment function. You tested basically the MVP. Does it work with the two, let's say, gaps that you've identified in existing solutions? And how did it develop from that?
So basically, when I realized that the MVP was working, I stopped the need to actually even talk to the host ever. So whenever I needed to charge, I block a time, and then the host will receive a text message saying, "Hey, Tom is coming today from 2 to 4 p.m. Be ready for him." And then payment automatically gets deducted from my credit card and goes to the host. So it removed 100% of the human-to-human interaction. And then when I realized that this can turn into something bigger was when my friend convinced me to do some market research and see if this can actually benefit more people. Some of the hosts actually told me that maybe some other people would like to hear about this. One of the very early hosts of AmpUp was actually, his name is Ray. So EV technology came out a long time ago, and there was actually a documentary made called "Who Killed the Electric Car?" And he was actually in that documentary. So he still has a Ford Ranger, full electric Ford Ranger that nobody even knew about from 20 years ago, and is still sitting on his driveway. And he drives a Nissan Leaf, and he also drives a Tesla Model 3. And he's had solar panels for 10 years. He actually told me that I should look more into maybe expanding this to benefit more people. And then that's when I did some market research. I ran a survey through SurveyMonkey, and I used Facebook to target people who are EV drivers. And then the results came back very strong and positive. So about 95% of the people I surveyed, which was all of 200 EV drivers, said they feel the public charging infrastructure is insufficient. And then a lot of people were saying that the exact percentage was about maybe 60% were saying that they do not have access to charging at work. And then about 30% said they don't have charging at home. So a lot of people actually are adopting EVs because they can charge at work. So they don't install charging at home, or because they are living in apartments. And then at work, it turns out that so many people are driving EVs. The few chargers available at work is like public charging, where it's first come, first serve. So for them to actually get a spot to charge at work, they need to wake up at 6 a.m. so that they can get the charging spot. Or they are using an internal email list or WhatsApp group to coordinate charging. So throughout that small sample size study, I felt this can actually really benefit a lot more people, especially around the scheduling part and payment part. That's when, also throughout that market research period, I read a research report written by my current co-founder, Tim. Yeah, so I read that report. I saw a lot of really, really detailed numbers, and I thought this guy really knows the industry. And I convinced him to be an advisor to me initially. And then he later joined me as a co-founder, knowing that I'm actually very committed to do this. And he sees that him and I together have the potential to push this to be a much bigger project. Mm. Yeah.
Okay, so you had the MVP and you had the idea, wow, well, this kind of works, right? I'm running a survey. I think I'm onto something. There must have been that kind of moment in your journey. And then I think, well, I know that you applied to Y Combinator at one point. Was that another big moment? How did you get into it? Was it just a pitch deck with those kinds of information? Was there more? And especially while you were in Y Combinator, what happened in these, I think, 3 months that you spent there?
I think it's safe now to tell you the real story behind how we got into Y Combinator. I was nervous about even telling the Y Combinator people because I felt afraid that they might kick me out or something. But the full story was this. We applied to Y Combinator with our previous blockchain energy project. And there's a gap of time between the application and the time that Y Combinator actually invites you on site for a 10-minute interview, where they decide if you are going to be in the batch or not. So within that gap, we actually pivoted from the blockchain energy project to AmpUp. And it was a hard decision for me at the time to whether to go into the interview still pitching the previous idea that got us the interview, or tell them on the spot about the pivot that happened about a week ago, where it was really nothing but just an idea.
Talk about agile, huh? So you applied with one idea and you went into the interview with another idea.
Yes. So the final decision was actually still pitching the previous idea. And basically I had to, call back my previous idea's co-founders and have them help me put on a show. And we were actually very good actors. I wouldn't say we were completely actors because we still fully believed in the previous mission. It was just failed, unfortunately, because the incumbents moved too slow. So we did get in by acting as if we were still working on the previous idea. And then the timing was still tricky even after we fully got into Y Combinator. I was still afraid to spend any penny of the $150,000 YC invested in us because I still haven't told them I pivoted. I kept being afraid that if I spend the money and then they later find out and they kick me out, I have to pay those back. Luckily, I found out one of our YC partners drives a Tesla Model 3. After knowing a little bit of his schedule, he drives from Mountain View to San Francisco, where he lives, but every day around maybe 6:30 to 7:30. So I try to call him when he's driving, not to get him in danger, but I know he's using the autopilot and he can take calls, and call him when he was doing exactly that, and then told him that we're pivoting to this AirBnB for EV charging, and he liked the pivot right away.
Okay, so now you got into Y Combinator, you decided to pivot, everyone's happy, everyone loves the idea, AirBnB for EV chargers. What happens in these 3 months?
So in these 3 months, it was basically a struggle to find my new co-founders, because I sort of went into Y Combinator as a solo founder because my previous co-founders were called back to pitch the previous idea. And then when I informed YC I pivoted, I also had to inform them that I'm now by myself. So for a while, I had to not only build an MVP, but also look for other people who are willing to come and help me with this. So another sort of the low points in a startup life is when, it gets really difficult to convince people to come and work with you on this idea. And it's even worse when you sort of convince someone and then that person ended up still leaving before YC finished, which both happened to me. So basically during the 3-month period, working with YC was very beneficial because it was sort of like a condensed MBA program where I learned about all the legal, accounting, marketing, sales, growth aspects of building a B2C startup, and at the same time trying to recruit other people to come and help me. Basically struggling through the 3 months, building first the web UI that I mentioned to you earlier, and then switching from that to actually the first, what I think is the actual MVP of the mobile app that around 60 people actually used. So getting a group of 60 users to actually use the app, which was actually already done with the market survey I did earlier of the 200 EV drivers. So at the end of the survey, I asked them, I'm actually building this Airbnb for electric vehicle charging. If you're interested in using this app, please leave your contact information. About 150 people left their information, but when we released the first MVP, only around 60 people actually downloaded the app and started using it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so after 3 months, you had a proper app with some basic functionality. You could reserve something and already pay. I don't know, how did it look versus how it looks now? And I think that was that 2 or 3 months ago or 5 months ago?
It's about 3 months ago.
3 months ago, right?
Yeah.
So then you graduate. How did the app look at that time?
Well, the app looked horrible at the time, and the reservation flow was extremely confusing. It's actually a classic software engineering issue that we ran into, especially with reservation making, because we're building this calendar basically for the charger. And the way it worked was extremely geeky. So let's say the shared time was between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. And if now I come in to book a time between noon and 1 p.m., I need to show that to the next person that makes the reservation, basically telling the next person what are the time ranges are available for him to make an additional reservation. So I can no longer make it look clean, like from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. like I did for the first guy. For the second person, I show him 2 slots, so from 10 to noon and then from 1 to 5. And as you can imagine, this thing got chopped up into many different small pieces, and then it became a big jumble on the UI to tell people here are the time ranges that you can make your reservations. So the reservation flow was a complete puzzle for people to figure out how to make a reservation. So at the very beginning, people sort of didn't really care about exactly how long they made the reservation. They all made half an hour reservations, and they showed up and still charged for 2 hours to 3 hours. Luckily, there weren't that many reservations on a single charger, so it didn't cause any conflict.
I feel it's impressive because we're not talking about a long time span. This is a couple of months, right? Where you kind of get it right. And I downloaded the app. I can tell you, well, it's much more easier to use it now, right? What are the things that you're working on, let's say what's on the roadmap for the next 3 to 6 months?
So we're, for the next 3 to 6 months, we're actually looking to enable more reservable chargers. So features associated with that is software to hardware integration. We were actually successful at integrating with 4 different products out there in the market to have our software actually start and stop charging of the actual device, so that when the person with a reservation showing up, he or she will be the only one that can start the charging, and charging will be stopped when the reservation ends. So this access control wasn't something available before, and it will be available in the near future. That's one of the major sort of mental barrier to a lot of people who are hosting, because they don't want their electricity to be stolen by random strangers, even though that really never happens. And even though if that happens, you're talking about $2 to $3 per hour of charging. But that's something we were able to accomplish. And because of that, we gained 3 hardware provider partners that can actually provide charging devices that are integrated with our software. So in the next 3 to 6 months, we have the sales team also actively approaching enterprise customers that are looking for charging solutions on their small community, charging solution. So we offer something where it's actually a perfect thing for us, because their chargers are typically installed in this more publicly accessible place, but it's private because it's serving mainly for their employees or people who are living in that maybe multi-unit dwellings, and then they choose to open that up to the public. So we're focused sort of on that area.
Yeah, I mean, that's a win-win, right? Because if you're working on these access controls, you give these companies a control to actually rent it out to maybe a certain group of people, certainly certain time slots. So yeah, interesting idea and I see that, I mean, it's very consistent. You said you're laser focused on the hosts, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that the things that you're working on now are kind of taking away friction points that the hosts might have to use your service.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, I mean, you grew quite a bit. You have 15 people now in your extended team. And one other thing that you mentioned is this has taught you, the experience of being an entrepreneur has taught you a lot. You have to hire people. You have to probably do some engineering yourself, some marketing. You have to take decisions. But if you kind of take a step back, I would all summarize this as being a leader in a way. You have to kind of decide and call the shots for all these different things. So how do you evolve, or how do you think about leading?
So I always thought about leading by example. So the leading part is, I feel, actually there's a lot of similarities with hiring and sales. So you actually want to filter out the people that don't actually fit with a particular challenge you're working on or with the type of working style that you have. So once you're able to actually accurately filter out those people, you end up finding people who are actually very easy to lead. They're leaders themselves. And you're able to sort of just lead by example and by just providing to people what a high standard of work is, and people will just automatically follow. So I've read a lot of books on management and leadership, but when what comes down to it was I think the major lesson that they're trying to teach is communication. Try to stay on the same page with people, even if they're already sort of working in sync with you. Make sure that you care about them personally, and you also care about them professionally. Other than that, just try to lead by example. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As you know, I'm German myself, so the idea of mobility is kind of ingrained in my DNA with all the German cars. And I do have to ask you, do you have a favorite German car?
Yes, the Porsche 911 GT3.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, that's picking one of the best of the crop there. I think the market for mobility is changing quite rapidly. We're seeing maybe two different kinds of, probably more, but I see two major trends. One is electromobility, and the second one is self-driving, right? And I'm fascinated. I'm not sure if you have an answer to this, but I always wonder, what do you think? What is the future of mobility in 10 years or whatever time frame you want to pick?
So I would think in 10 years, things hopefully are mobility are faster, automated, and electric. So those three keywords, I hope they all happen in the next 10 years.
Let's imagine a scenario where every car is self-driving. Right? Let's just take that as let's imagine that would happen. I mean, if I understand you correctly, because these cars still need to charge. Right. So the technology that you're developing is and correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't really matter if you take away the human aspect of booking things. You could maybe, with your blockchain experience, maybe that is another use case, so that these cars have to communicate and charge somewhere. So you might not only be building a solution for now, to solve the problem that you've identified with your Nissan Leaf, but maybe also for one that may come in 10 years when self-driving cars need to communicate autonomously and you don't care about where they charge.
Yep.
Would you agree?
Yes, 100%. So some of the sort of the auto OEMs have actually approached us about integrating our data with their cars. So in the future, starting with humans making direct reservations through the car's interface rather than through our mobile app. So that's sort of one step towards just having the car directly making the reservation in the future when they become fully automatic.
Yeah, and who better to do it than than you with blockchain and the energy experience? I think you're in a fantastic position. Well, let's circle a bit back on Germany. I do have to ask this question. So German car makers, I would say they're struggling a bit, to play catch up with Tesla. But now they're all announcing these big initiatives. VW, Volkswagen is announcing 30 billion euro investment until 2030 into electromobility. Do you think that these OEMs or VWs, BMWs, Audis have a chance against Tesla? How do you see that market?
I definitely see traditional automakers having a good chance competing if they are committed in electric mobility against Tesla. So the major challenges with building cars is actually not with the individual technology that go into individual cars. Is how do you build up production? How do you build up the automated factories that can build? How do you line up the inventories? How do you line up the operations? And then after you sell the car, how do you make sure you have enough resources to support, customer issues, customer relationship, fixing the cars, and all those things. I think those are some of the things that are done much better with more traditional automakers.
Cool. Let me ask you one question that I ask every guest on my show. And that is, what is the best advice that you've ever received?
If I really have to pick one, I would say just treat others the way you want to be treated. That's the reason why I'm a leader by example. So I don't want to hold other people up to a standard where I myself cannot meet. So I definitely try to
sales, now the way that you do it now. So I want to thank you for coming on, and I wish you all the best for AmpUp.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's been fun being interviewed by you, and I hope this can reach the German audience in an interesting way, and hope to grow some users in Germany.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. So, hier ist wieder Alex. Mir hat dieses Gespräch richtig viel Spaß gemacht, weil Tom sehr bodenständig, aber gleichzeitig wahnsinnig ambitioniert ist. Hier sind die 3 Sachen, die ich aus dem Gespräch gelernt habe. Erstens, don't believe the hype. Tom war selber einer der Goldgräber, als vor ein paar Jahren der Bitcoin- und Ethereum-Hype losging. Er erzählt, wie Investoren ihm regelrecht Druck gemacht haben, die Story seines ICOs, also Initial Coin Offerings, aufzubauschen und 1 Million in das Marketing zu stecken. Viele dieser ICOs waren nichts mehr als Schall und Rauch und haben viel Geld mit dem Hype verdient. Das sollte jedem immer wieder vor Augen führen, nicht alles, was verspricht, das nächste große Ding zu sein, wird auch ein riesiger Erfolg. Zweitens, Gründer sein kann angsteinflößend sein, bleib flexibel. An 2 Stellen spricht Tom sehr offen über die Zweifel und auch die Angst, die er auf seiner Unternehmerreise erlebt hat. Zuerst beschreibt er sich als eine Art Tier in der afrikanischen Savanne, von einem stärkeren Raubtier gerissen werden kann. Ein riesiger Überlebenskampf. Als zweites beschreibt er die Existenzängste, die ihn plagten, als er einen Pivot hingelegt hat. Und zwar zwischen Bewerbung für den Y Combinator und Interview, um in den Y Combinator reinzukommen. Er hat ein ziemliches Schauspiel hingelegt, seine alten Co-Founder rekrutiert und dann unmittelbar mit einem neuen Gründer an AmpUp gearbeitet. Drittens, die Power eines Bottom-up-Ökosystems. Das Geniale an Toms Idee ist, dass er jedem Fahrer eines Elektroautos, der an seinem Haus in einen Charger investiert hat, eine Möglichkeit gibt, fast anstrengungslos ein bisschen Geld zu verdienen. Damit durchbricht er das Henne-Ei-Problem, das deutsche Autobauer haben, wenn sie über die Ladeinfrastruktur nachdenken. Die denken nämlich eher top-down. Das heißt, wie könnten sie eine riesige Ladeinfrastruktur von sich aus aufbauen, wenn es eigentlich noch kaum Elektroautos auf der Straße gibt. Tom aber gibt jedem Teilnehmer seines Ökosystems klare Anreize, daran teilzunehmen. Das war's für heute. Wenn dir mein Podcast gefällt, dann schreib mir unbedingt einen Review auf Apple Podcasts. Ich möchte mehr Menschen in Deutschland mit diesen Gründergeschichten erreichen und deine Bewertung hilft mir sehr. Alle weiteren Infos und meinen Newsletter findest du auf digitaleoptimisten.de. Bis zum nächsten Mal.